I secretly learned my fiancé's language after his mother insulted me. On our wedding day, I used it in my speech to expose her in front of everyone. I am engaged to a beautiful man. He's not from around here. He came to this nation for college, which is where we met. We were in the same program. He's the kindest and most kind guy I know. He always treats me with such love and respect. I couldn't ask for a better spouse. We get along well, and things are usually rather easy between us. I'm head over heels for him. The issue, and it's a major one, is his mother. She doesn't like me, and that has been clear from the beginning. I've tried to be polite and considerate. I've attempted to get to know her, but nothing seems to work. I believe, and my fiancé concurs, that it is because I am white. His mother wished he would marry someone from their own nation. It's not just that she disapproves. She intentionally makes me feel uncomfortable, which is quite difficult. It puts a strain on things, even if my fiancé and I are content. It's like a perpetual shade over our relationship. The first time I met his parents was a complete mess. We went over to their place for dinner, and his mother snubbed me the moment I came in. I tried to say hi and be nice, but she refused to acknowledge me. It was as if I wasn't even present. My fiancé did his best to involve me in the conversation, but his mother refused to speak with me at all. Despite the fact that I knew she spoke English, she spent the entire evening speaking only in her own tongue to her son and husband. It left me feeling quite uneasy and out of place. My fiancé, and even his father, was uneasy about the whole thing. Dinner itself was really silent and tense. I felt like I was invading a private family moment, despite the fact that I was only supposed to be a visitor. I didn't just feel excluded from the talk. I also felt physically separated from them at the table. To make matters worse, as I reached for one of the plates, she took it away and served it to her husband and kid first, ensuring that I was the last to receive anything. My fiancé was very horrified. He apologized repeatedly on the way home. He kept expressing how awful her behavior was, and how sad he was that I had to go through it. He promised me that if things didn't improve, we would have less contact with her. He didn't even wait for my response before apologizing and defending myself. He appeared to be as upset as I was, if not more so. The entire meeting was unpleasant, and it gave me a good indication of what I was in for. Of course, even after that dreadful first meeting, I had to see his mother on several occasions. It was his birthday, and he wanted to celebrate with his family, including me. I understand how much he loves his family. Each time, I found myself battling my own emotions. I wanted to be there for my spouse, but I was afraid to go. I hoped things would improve, but she remained as cold and disinterested as before. It became a pattern. She would point to my hair, features, or clothes and make comments in her home tongue before laughing. It was clear she was making fun of me. She once pointed at my hair and commented on how it resembled a bird's nest. Then she inquired loudly if I even knew how to care for myself, before laughing again. My fiancé became very defensive and began arguing with her. But when I asked him what she was saying, he simply brushed it off and attempted to change the conversation. Later, he revealed that his mother had made a comment about my huge nose and pale skin. He clearly did not want to repeat the hurtful things she was saying. I felt that I was not only being ostracized, but being picked on, which was quite terrible. It's not like I'm a terrible person. I actually think I'm a very decent catch. I'm not trying to brag, but I am considered attractive. I was the valedictorian of my college class, and I actually have a better earning job than my fiancé. It isn't about the money, but it demonstrates that I am responsible and hardworking. We divide all of our expenses. I offer him nice gifts, and I've even started learning to prepare his favorite cuisines from his native country. I am doing my best to demonstrate my dedication to him. I also actively endeavor to simplify our home life. I do a lot of the housework and errands to show him that I'm a partner in all aspects of life, not just the fun stuff. I really tried to win over his mother as well. I purchased Christmas gifts for both her and his father. I gave them a lot of thought, trying to locate items they could enjoy, but we were never invited to their Christmas festivities. His father is usually kind to me, which I much appreciate. The issue is primarily with his mother. It seems like no matter what I do, it is never enough. I recall giving his mother a very fine scarf, and she looked at it with hatred and threw it away. Later, I overheard her telling someone else that it was cheap and ugly, which matched my tastes. Things like that truly appeal to me. It's not limited to his parents' house. At larger family gatherings, such as parties or weddings, she does the same way. She'll scowl at me from across the room before whispering to other relatives, pointing at and discussing me. If I try to approach her, she simply ignores me and walks away. It's so obvious, yet so degrading. It's not like she's hiding anything. She makes a point of physically turning away from me, letting everyone know that she rejects me. I noticed her at one party complimenting another relative's daughter-in-law, remarking how nice and conventional she was, all while utterly ignoring me. It felt as if she was trying to demonstrate to everyone how much superior this other woman was than me simply because she was from the same nation as them. What's more annoying is that I know she speaks English fluently. She is a kindergarten teacher, therefore she has to. She purposefully speaks in her native language to exclude me, making me feel like an outsider in my own fiancé's family. It's as if she utilizes language barriers as a weapon. I recognize that if I truly wanted to connect with my fiancé on a deeper level, I needed to better grasp his culture, including his language. I wanted to be able to share that aspect of his life with him. I figured it would bring us closer. I chose to study his original language. I intended to keep it a secret from him. I anticipated surprise him one day by engaging in a lengthy conversation in his language. I wanted to see the expression on his face. I wanted him to know how much I cared. So I truly dedicated to studying the language. I spent 5 months working on it virtually every day. I looked up every resource I could find online, including YouTube videos and language study programs. I practiced speaking aloud, hoping to get the pronunciation correct. I focused on being able to hold a conversation rather than just acquiring a few phrases here and there. My major motivation was to communicate with and surprise my fiancé. But, to be fully honest, a part of me wanted to know exactly what his mother was saying about me. And, well, I began to understand. It wasn't easy, but after a few months, I was able to understand more of what Mom was saying at family events or when she thought I wasn't listening. I pretended I didn't comprehend anything around her. I just stayed quiet and listened. And what did I hear? It was devastating. It was far worse than I had imagined. All the little comments, murmurs, and laughing were so cruel and intimate. I recall when my fiancé informed his mother that we were engaged. We were in the car, and he had her on loudspeaker. She instantly began ranting about how he was marrying a white woman and how their ancestors would be rolling in their graves. The phrase rolling in their graves made me feel as if I was doing something wrong just by existing. It felt greater than just her dislike for me, like I was going against years of tradition. She stated she was having trouble accepting me. Then she said that if he had to marry a white lady, she wished he had selected someone more homely. She claimed I was too modern to be a decent mother. My fiancé, of course, defended me, but she would not stop. She acknowledged as much. She'll probably raise our grandchildren to be spoiled and disrespectful, unlike children raised in our culture. She's completely unfit to be a mother in our family. That one really hurt. Later, when we went to see his parents to start talking about wedding plans, his father was overjoyed for us. You could feel it on his face. But what about his mother? She was as disapproving as always. While we were there, she began ranting in her own language at my fiancé and his father. But this time, I got everything. She was wishing my fiancé would reconsider the marriage, claiming that an astrologer had foretold a black hole in the family because of me, and that I was infertile. She began fussing about how many of my white relatives would attend the wedding and even recommended removing people from my guest list. My fiancé declined, and they had a heated disagreement. I just stood there, crushed, and knew exactly what she was saying. To top it all off, she lied to my father-in-law, stating I had been bragging about how much more money I made than my fiancé, in an attempt to make me appear terrible. It was all so unfair and untrue. I thought wedding dress shopping may be a good bonding experience, so I invited my future mother-in-law, as well as my mother and sister to join me. I was hoping it would be an opportunity for us to connect and have a good day together. It proved to be anything but that. She was terrible. She made a critical comment about every dress I tried on. She'd roll her eyes, make passive-aggressive comments, and basically make me feel bad. What is the worst part? When I discovered a dress that I simply adored, I felt lovely wearing it. My mother and sister were in tears, telling me how beautiful I looked. What about my potential mother-in-law? She simply looked at me and exclaimed in her native language that it was horrible. I completely understood her. My mother and sister were swooning over me, telling me how beautiful I looked, while his mother kept picking on every dress. It was such a striking contrast. I was surrounded by affection, but I could feel daggers being flung my way. And it wasn't just what she said, but how she said it. She was deliberately attempting to destroy a good time for me. I walked to the restroom briefly, and while I was gone, she began insulting my body in front of my sister. She remarked the clothes didn't fit me well and made other disparaging remarks. I tried to keep it together. However, I ended up crying in the dressing room. It wasn't just sadness, it was fury, frustration, and everything. All of my efforts to be kind seemed to be in vain. It was a moment when I felt absolutely defeated. I kept questioning myself why I was even trying. After that day at the dress shop, I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I couldn't keep letting her abuse me like this. But I didn't want to just yell at her or start a fight. I wanted something more meaningful. I wanted her to understand how much she had hurt me. So I started thinking about the wedding, and then I got this thought. What if I embarrassed her in front of everyone? I understand it sounds horrible. But after everything she'd put me through, I felt I deserved to give her a taste of her own medicine. I intended to punish her once and for all. But then I started to question myself. I'm going to you Reddit. Would I be the a-hole if I went ahead with this? Update 1. Wow. Thank you very much for your comments and recommendations. I sincerely appreciate all of the encouragement and humor. It's made me feel a lot less alone in this circumstance. I wanted to clarify a few points based on some of the comments I've seen. First and foremost, I want to make it clear that my fiancé has always stood up for me. He's been tremendously helpful since the beginning. He confronts his mother when she is disrespectful, and he always comforts me when I am unhappy. He is genuinely my rock, and I could not ask for a greater companion. I want everyone to know that he is completely on my side in all of this. He's not enabling her conduct. He's actively opposing it. What about my potential mother-in-law? I suppose the simplest way to characterize her is as a cruel old woman. I don't believe she is particularly racist in a wide sense. I believe she has an issue with me specifically. It is personal. She wanted her son to marry someone from her own background, and I didn't fit the bill. I want to make it obvious that all of this is coming from her. It is not a reflection of her culture or community. I've read requests to report her to the school where she works, but I'm not going to do so. I do not want to ruin her career. I might be furious and hurt, but I don't want to get to that level. Her issue is with me specifically, and it is not fair to punish her professionally for something that occurred in our personal lives. I just want to deal with this situation directly and without inflicting any needless damage. Update 2. Hello again, everyone. I'm writing from my honeymoon. We're blissfully married. I wanted to give you all an update because I've received so many messages and requests. We've been celebrating our love and, let's just say, a little sweet revenge. The wedding day has finally arrived. Everything was gorgeous, and I was overjoyed to be marrying the love of my life. When it came time to deliver speeches, I decided to try something unusual. I began in English, thanking all of our friends and families for being there to celebrate our momentous day. Then, I switched to my husband's native tongue. You should have seen the expressions on everyone's faces, particularly my husband and his family. They were completely shocked. I could see my husband's eyes tear up. I thanked his family in their native language for welcoming me, though in my mother-in-law's case, this wasn't quite true at the moment. But I was building toward something. I explained to them that studying their language was my wedding gift to my husband, a way for me to show him how much I loved him and cherished his culture. He was so moved that he came over and kissed me in the middle of his speech. Then I focused my attention on his father. I thanked him again, in his original tongue, for his generosity and genuine warmth. And then I turned to face my mother-in-law. I thanked her sarcastically for her rejection. I told everyone, in her own tongue, about all of the insults, attempts to exclude me, and nasty things she had said and done. I told them about the heinous insult she made regarding my wedding outfit. I explained how she informed everyone that I was infertile. I could see her face growing redder and redder. She was obviously embarrassed. I continued. I also want to publicly address the false claim my mother-in-law made about me bragging about my income. I replied that this was a pure fiction, intended to make me appear bad in front of her family. She was complete rubbish and a piece of garbage that had been picked up from a dumpster. After discussing the specifics of what my mother-in-law had done, I extended the message. Still speaking in her own tongue, I stated that skin color and ethnicity should not be considered when it comes to love. I emphasized how much effort I had put into learning their language and adopting my husband's culture since it was vital to me to be involved in all aspects of his life. Then I explained how my mother-in-law's behavior, her isolation and degrading remarks, had only served to widen the distance. I looked at her straight and calmly warned her that if her behavior persisted, she would have no access to any future children we might have. I made it clear that I would not tolerate my children being subjected to such hatred and discrimination. My hubby was really proud of me. He subsequently told me that he had never felt greater love for me than in that moment, when I stood up for myself and our future. I simply ignored my mother-in-law for the remainder of the evening. I did not want to satisfy her with any more replies. She, on the other hand, was visibly enraged. She began arguing with my father-in-law and husband. Eventually, she stormed away. My husband stated he was confident she would think twice about disrespecting me again. But the nicest part was the reaction of other relatives. Many of them approached me afterwards, complimenting my language skills and expressing how thoughtful it was of me to learn their language. They told me how much this meant to them. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. That I was a true member of the family. I thoroughly loved the remainder of the wedding and had a strong sense of empowerment. I believe I proved my point and received the vengeance I sought. I felt as if a big weight had been lifted. Update 3. Hello again, everyone. We just returned from our honeymoon, and I had a lot of voicemails from my mother-in-law. My husband indicated he would support anything I decided to do, whether I called her back or ignored her entirely. Honestly, my first thought was to ignore the calls. I was still upset and angry, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared to talk to her. But, after some thought, I decided to give her one last shot. I called her back, and we decided to meet. When I saw her, she appeared different. She was nervous and appeared apologetic. Then, for the first time, she issued an official apology. She stated that she was really angry after the wedding, specifically after my speech, but that she had some time to contemplate. She stated that a number of relatives had called her out on her behavior, which made her realize how terribly she had acted. She stated that she had treated me harshly and unfairly. She recognized that I had made a genuine attempt to embrace their culture, learning the language and all. She made no particular apologies for the worst things she had said, such as calling my clothing awful or claiming I was infertile. That bit was somewhat skimmed over, which I noticed. But it was a general apology, and it appeared honest. She added that my husband is her only kid and that she has always been quite protective of him. She stated that she had always imagined him marrying someone from their home country, and that she struggled to accept me since I did not fit her expectations. She apologized for making me feel uncomfortable and pledged to be more tolerant. I calmly listened to what she said before accepting her apology. I told her I wanted to move on and try to improve our relationship. I admired her candor and willingness to attempt to change. However, I made it plain that I had some doubts. It's not like everything is instantaneously fine now. This is more of a cautious step forward, and while I'm hopeful she'll change, I'm not completely persuaded. After the apology, we actually began talking, albeit in her native tongue. She told me stories of my husband when he was a little boy, and it felt good, like we were finally connecting, perhaps for the first time. I could tell she was trying, so I decided to try too. There were still some little issues, such as her avoidance of staring me directly in the eye for too long, which suggested she wasn't totally at ease yet. Then there was one time when I prepared supper and she tried to compliment me, but it came off as a little backhanded. She said, "This dish is actually quite good, for a white person's attempt. It's almost as good as how we make it." It was better than an insult, I suppose, but it still had a sting to it. I understand that this upgrade may not meet everyone's expectations. Some of you undoubtedly wanted me to cut her off totally or continue the feud, but I believe I made my point at the wedding. I stood up for myself and told her, in front of everyone, that her actions were unacceptable. Right now, all I want is a drama-free family life. I want to move forward with enthusiasm and give this a genuine shot to be a new beginning. I believe her own family's reaction was what finally convinced her to rethink her mind. She claimed that many relatives called her after the wedding to tell her she was in the wrong. I believe she eventually recognized how biased and unfair she had been. But, and this is key, I understand how difficult it is to break old habits. I am giving her the benefit of the doubt. I am willing to try, but one incorrect move, one return to old rudeness, and the truce will be broken. I will not hesitate to defend myself again if necessary. I hope for the best. We'll see how this goes. My spouse and I deserve to live happy and tranquil lives, therefore let us pray for that. So, that is where things stand. My mother-in-law and I had a heart-to-heart and are ready to try to start over. I will keep you all updated. I have big news for everyone. I am pregnant. My husband and I are very pleased to begin this new chapter in our life. We can't wait to meet our little one. And I am pleased to say that my relationship with my mother-in-law has continued to improve. Our relationship has undergone a significant positive adjustment. She is a lot more accepting and friendly to me now. She genuinely spends time with me, offers to help with things, and even gives me advice, some of it unsolicited, of course, but I'll accept it. I attempt to reciprocate by being understanding and upfront with her. Both my mother and mother-in-law have been wonderful. They both check in on me on a frequent basis to ensure that everything is going well. They've even worked together to help us set up the baby's nursery. It's lovely to see them bond like that. We actually feel like we're forming one huge, joyful family. However, there are still small reminders that things are not perfect. We were talking about baby names the other day, and I suggested a few that I thought were cute. My mother-in-law scoffed and said, "Those sound so American. Wouldn't you want something a little more cultured? It was a minor remark disguised as a suggestion, but it still hurt a little. It's as if those old biases are still present, just below the surface. My husband continues to be extremely supportive. He's relieved to see his mother making an effort, and he's as excited about the baby as I am. What about my father-in-law? He has been wonderful. He's building a baby rocker for the nursery and has already promised to build a treehouse for the little one when they grow up. I am deeply grateful for his love and support. Overall, things are significantly better than they were before. I'm optimistic about the future and hope that my relationship with my mother-in-law will continue to improve. I'm looking forward to a future full of love, and hopefully, no more drama. Everyone seems to be in a much better mood right now. We're very excited about our little one. My 12-year-old daughter left me for her rich stepfather. After losing her mother and being kicked out by her stepfather, she returns broke at 22. My ex-wife, then 41, female, and I, then 45, male, split up 12 years ago. She found solace in the company of a wealthy man. Sorry, there's no better way to put it. She was a stay-at-home wife and mother who had little interest in working or earning money. She wanted to stay at home and take care of the house and our daughter. I never forced my daughter to work after she was born, even though my finances were tight. I was working 2 jobs and earning enough money to eat well. However, my salary could not afford the luxury lifestyle she desired. I will not go into detail regarding my relationship with my ex. This piece is about Laura. Details regarding my ex-wife may be covered in another post. When Laura was 10, my ex-wife admitted that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man. She moved out on the same day that we filed for divorce. We became co-parents to Laura. Because I had 2 jobs and she didn't, we decided that I'd have Laura on weekends. I formed a strong bond with Laura. We have some fantastic adventure trips together. Even though the divorce was traumatic, spending time with her made me feel so much better. As time passed, I noticed Laura was delaying our meetings. Previously, every Friday, I looked forward to her email explaining what she planned to do over the weekend. However, the email's substance eventually changed to, "Sorry, I can't make it this weekend. We're going skiing," or, "We have other fancy sports or SL trips with stepfather." I initially ignored this, believing her stepfather was simply trying to keep her happy and that I should not be jealous. I eventually concluded Laura didn't want to see me as regularly. Our weekly meetings became bi-monthly, then monthly, only one day of the weekend. I saw she was not enjoying our time together as much as she used to. When it became clear that she was purposefully avoiding me, I challenged her. I tried to explain that I was doing everything I could to keep her happy, even overextending myself financially. Despite this, she continued to forsake our weekends together. She began lying, claiming she had schoolwork or projects on weekends when in fact, she was going out with her stepfather. Her excuses sounded real at times, but they were mostly made up. Whatever little time we had together, she would always complain about how much better it was going out with her stepfather since he doesn't look at the price tag before ordering anything. Even on trips I accompanied her on, she would prefer to spend time with her stepfather. She began grumbling about tiny inconveniences that previously did not disturb her. But she never stopped talking about the new PlayStation 5 or bike her stepfather gave her, or the expensive stuff her mother purchased. I felt she was too young to grasp that showering someone with material possessions is not love. The problem got worse when she ignored me for almost 3 months. Despite several calls and texts, I received no response. Desperate, I called my lawyer and told him everything. He informed me I could sue my ex-wife for alienating Laura. But Laura was 12 at the time, and my lawyer advised that if she admitted in court that she no longer wanted to spend time with me, it may exacerbate the situation. Laura could say she needed more money to live up to her lifestyle, which could imply increased child support. Yes, I was already paying child support, despite the fact that her wealthy stepfather provided so much for her. I dropped the idea of suing my ex for custody. There was no purpose. My attorney advised we have a formal out-of-court conversation with them. It would help me understand what they wanted. I agreed to go this way, and my lawyer wrote them a letter with extensive allegations. He said that we desired an out-of-court settlement. I had a strange sensation that my ex-wife would refuse to talk since she had enough money and time to burn in a court action. To my astonishment, she agreed to discuss and resolve this matter in front of the attorney. My ex-wife's husband attended the conference, as did my ex-wife and Laura. They both swore they were beyond this and had no idea if Laura was ghosting me. They admitted they had no part to play in it and stood aside, allowing Laura to speak for herself. Lara then delivered the most devastating blow of my life. She demanded that I relinquish my parental rights. That was 10 years ago, yet I still remember the frightening event vividly. I was dead silent for, I'm not sure how long. My lawyer pressed me for a response, but I just stared at everyone. What do I say? When I looked at my ex-wife, her lips twisted into a smile, as if she knew what was going to happen. I took Lara's hand and murmured, "Baby, I hope you understand what you're saying. Giving away my parental rights would mean you could no longer call me dad. You would no longer be my daughter." She shook off my hand, stared straight in my eyes and said, "Yeah, that's what I want." I was astounded. I ran out of words to explain the implications of her decision. My lawyer attempted to explain the legal repercussions, such as property concerns and other issues, but she refused to change her decision. She looked at her stepfather and questioned, "Once he disowns me, you'll be able to adopt me as your daughter, right?" He nodded with wide eyes and replied, "Certainly, darling." Words cannot express the bitterness I felt at that moment. My world was destroyed, to say the least. I lost my sense of purpose in life. After my wife of 15 years cheated on me, Lara was the one bright spot in my life. She was the one I looked forward to after working 2 jobs. I didn't date anyone for 2 years after my divorce. I didn't have the time and didn't want to. I wanted to give Lara my complete love and attention. This is what I received in return. She wanted to get rid of me. My state was so pitiful that I couldn't think clearly. My lawyer borrowed some time to respond to them. I'm sure my ex and her husband slept well that night after seeing me in such a vulnerable position. My lawyer drove me home. After he went, I cried like a baby for hours in my empty house. My heart was filled with a wide range of emotions. I contacted my folks and informed them of Lara's desire. They were completely terrified and hurried over to comfort me. My parents, particularly my mother, were really close to Lara. She had been caring for her for over a year when my wife needed surgery and was forced to stay in bed. During that time, my mother took care of both Lara and my ex-wife. Mom gave it a go, but Lara insisted that I give up my parental rights. She passionately wanted to be her stepfather's daughter. He had informed her that he couldn't adopt her unless I relinquished my parental rights. I asked my lawyer what my choices were. He suggested we could sue them for manipulating Lara, but because she was 12, it would be difficult to show she was being manipulated. Besides, they had the money to pursue a long court action, whereas I did not. Plus, what's the sense of battling when the person I'm fighting for has already decided on their side? It was a lost battle. I had no choice but to swallow the bitter pill and give up my fatherly rights. I spent the next week wrapped up in my bed. I left my second job. Who do I work for now? I lost all motivation to get up in the morning and go to work. I took so many absences from my full-time job and struggled so hard that I was eventually dismissed. I moved to a different town, slept at a subway station, and walked around like a crazy person for days. I gradually got out of it, found a new job, went to the gym and enrolled in treatment. It took me around 2 years to recover. I didn't date, but I did go on a lot of solitary treks as a form of treatment. During one of these visits I met my current wife, Brianna. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. After a while of dating, we moved in together. Brianna introduced me to Emma for the first time, and I broke down. She reminded me of Lara. I strongly wanted Emma to address me as Dad, but I held back. I did not want to damage myself again. I had a healthy but distant relationship with Emma. On her 12th birthday, Emma requested me to adopt her. I felt so overwhelmed. I now have 2 kids, Emma and Amy, a 3-year-old toddler, with my second wife. I believe I've provided enough context on my circumstance. Fast forward to a week ago. I was returning from work when I noticed a familiar face smiling at me. As I approached, I saw it was none other than Lara. I felt shivers, as if I had seen a ghost. She was taller, slimmer and much more attractive, but it was easy to recognize her. She ran up to me and hugged me saying, "Dad, I'm your daughter Lara. I finally found you." I gazed at her with lifeless eyes and replied, "I have 2 daughters, but you're not one of them." Before she could say anything, I began walking away. She followed me, but I turned around and yelled, "Quit following me or I'll report you." I did not see her after that. The next day, she arrived at my residence. As soon as I opened the door, she exclaimed, "I apologize, I know you're angry with me but please hear me out. Mom has died and Dad, stepfather, has brought his mistress home. He doesn't love me as much as he did when Mom was living. He's cut me off financially and says I need to start earning my own money. When I pestered him, he threatened to disown me. I listened to her outburst and said with a straight face, "So what?" She began pleading with me for another opportunity. I screamed at her to leave and slammed the door in her face. She then went to my mother and apologized. She was able to persuade my mother with her emotions, and now she wants me to reunite with Lara for the sake of our family. The anguish she caused me is preventing me from reconciling with her. Am I in a **** hole? Update 1. Some of you inquired about my ex-wife, wondering whether she was a gold digger, if she manipulated Lara, or if it was my fault. So here's a quick background on my ex-wife. We dated for 2 years before we married. She worked at a neighborhood bar as a waitress while we were dating. I was a regular there, which is how we first met. She was living with a coworker. I worked one full-time job and lived in a studio apartment. That's when I acquired another job, saved more money and purchased a house to accommodate her. We were married, and she quit her work. For the first 6 to 7 years of our marriage, she was pleased and content with my salary. But then she began moaning about how her friends' husbands earned more money. She would even tell me that instead of settling for me, she should have waited longer to find a richer husband. It was offensive, and we would have fights. Of course, I couldn't just stand there and take the obscenities she hurled at me. Eventually, our connection became chilly and distant. One day, she revealed that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man and would be going out to live with him. I didn't beg her to stay, but I did warn her that these wealthy men regard women like her as toys. They play with them and then discard them when they're finished. She said she didn't rush things this time, and she'd been seeing him for 2 years. She trusted him enough to live with him. After that, I didn't have anything to say. I kept quiet and sucked it up. Some of you pointed out that Lara was just 12 when she requested me to disavow her, and that I should have battled for her. You are correct that she was a juvenile when all of this occurred, and I do not deny that she was emotionally and financially misled. When she became 18, she had the option of contacting me, but she chose not to. She's now 22 and is just seeking out since her stepfather cut her off financially. Someone questioned how my ex-wife died. I didn't ask Lara about it, but she informed my mother that her mother died from a serious illness. Lara also had a liver condition and needed surgery as a baby. The problem is that Lara is exploiting my mother's emotions in order to assist her reconcile with me. Instead of discussing it over the phone, I went to see my mother and discovered that Lara had fed her sob stories to win her back. She stated she was homeless, had no employment or money, and had been living on the streets since her stepfather kicked her out. My mother requested I meet her and I accepted for her sake. Mom contacted Lara, and she arrived within an hour. I probed her aggressively and all of the facts came out. It turns out that her mother and stepfather spoiled her so much that she never finished high school. She was too busy vacationing and dining with them to think about schooling or school. I'm not sure what that man was thinking by indulging her in this way. I'm not sure what her mom was thinking when she allowed this to happen. Lara insisted that everything she did and said, including the parental rights issue and the ghosting, was part of her mother's plan to embarrass me. I asked her why her mother would do such a thing. She said it was because I didn't make enough to purchase her mom high-end clothing and accessories, which had embarrassed her in front of her friends. Lara claimed her mother devised the scheme to shame and humiliate me in front of her new husband. Listening to this was really distressing because it brought back all of the traumatic experiences I had worked so hard to forget. I told Lara that the past was done, her mother was gone, so what did she want from me now? She asked me to accept her as my daughter again. When I questioned what would happen after that, she quickly said, "It means I would be your daughter, and you would have my back." I answered, "Okay, I will accept you as my daughter, but all you will get from me is love. I'm planning to give Emma and Amy my property, insurance money and savings. But I shall cherish you as my eldest daughter. Will that work for you?" She froze. After stammering for a time, she responded, "Yeah, we can discuss money later." "You are not going to make a will now, are you?" I said, "Yes, Emma and Amy are already identified as beneficiaries in my insurance and savings accounts. I also bought a house in the new city and gave it to my second wife Brianna. I won't change any of that for you. If you're good with that, bring me the document I signed giving up my parental rights, and I'll have my lawyer prepare a new one to overturn it." She answered, "Yeah, sure," but remained mute for the rest of the conversation. My mother offered her food, but she rejected, citing a pressing matter. 2 weeks have gone and she has yet to turn up. I pointed this out to my mother, adding that it was all about money. Lara backed off after I informed her I wasn't going to give her any. What a useless piece of work she is. Update 2. I warned you it was all about money, and it certainly is. Lara returned to my mother's house 2 weeks ago, despite the fact that we had last spoken 4 months ago. She looked awful, with red puffy eyes covered in dark rings and rashes all over her body, possibly caused by swallowing something she was sensitive to. She was crying and screaming for assistance. She demanded money from my mother. Lara explained that she had been living with a friend since her stepfather disowned her, but that friend had now thrown her out as well. She claimed to have sold the majority of her items to buy food in recent months, but she now had no money or possessions. Mom questioned why she hadn't acquired a job. Lara claimed she dropped out of school and no one would hire her. Mom recommended communicating with a friend who manages a bakery to see if she could get Lara a job as a cleaner or something similar. After all, there are many careers that do not require a high school graduation. Lara remained mute and wailed, asking my mother for money. Mom gave her some packaged meals and $100. She also questioned why Lara had not brought the paperwork to challenge the disownment. Lara stated that it was at her stepfather's place and that she would retrieve it next time. She accepted the money and food, then left. Mom didn't tell me about this visit at first because she assumed I'd be upset with her. 3 days earlier, Lara returned to my mother's house with the same sob story. Mom asked what she did with the money, and Lara responded she spent it on groceries. When Mom inquired about the job, Lara did not provide a direct answer. This time, Mom refused to give her any more money, claiming she didn't have any to spare and no more food. She simply handed her a loaf of bread. As Lara was preparing to leave, Mom inquired whether she had changed her mind about being my daughter. Lara responded, "What is the sense of having him as my father if he isn't going to give me any money? He has given everything to his beggar stepchildren." Mom was taken aback by her statements and chased her out of the house, threatening her not to return. Mom quickly called to tell me about both trips. I did feel upset with her for assisting Lara the first time, and I warned Mom to be cautious while answering the door at night. Based on Mom's description of Lara's appearance, it appears that she is engaged with bad company and may pose a threat to Mom, especially since she is living alone following Dad's death last year. We want to seek a restraining order against Lara in case she returns and causes trouble again. Today I went to my mom's residence. I went outside to see whether Lara was around, but I couldn't find her. I will be staying here for a week. I don't know what to do, but I'm sad about her. If what she said about my ex-wife is correct, my ex went too far in her attempts to disgrace me, destroying her own daughter's life. If Lara is lying about it, she has already paid the price for her nasty behavior. By the way, someone remarked on my previous post that everyone has the freedom to make their own decisions, and Lara wasn't bad for choosing her stepfather over me. She was simply on the wrong side. I suppose that's true. She made a decision 10 years ago, and she has to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. Am I the asshole for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family? Original post, August 18, 2024. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked-in stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought APs into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave, but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto myself, in the form of screaming, insulting or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to Dad about something Mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. Hell, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18 and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her APs. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see. And instead put that energy to my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him, but he is family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair, and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his coworker should work instead to forgive his wife and, by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness. And how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was fucking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up I shouted how he was a pathetic father, pathetic man, his family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a fucking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather fuck half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, the best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume my therapy, that's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers, my uncles, said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. AITA has no consensus bot, OOP was NTA with a few YTAs. Relevant comments. Comment 1. It sounds like you finally got to express the pent-up feelings you've carried for so long. While the outburst wasn't ideal, it seems like it was a necessary step towards healing. It's good you're resuming therapy to process this further. OOP. Yeah, afterwards it hit me that although it was very cathartic, it definitely wasn't the most appropriate way to handle it, lol. Comment 2. He sounds like a gentle, kind and well-meaning person. You directed what is very clearly anger and resentment for your mother at him. It's a bit more complicated than being an asshole or not. You seem to have got some catharsis out of it. I just don't believe he is the one you really wanted to scream at, and from the sounds of it he was also a victim of your mother too. And while he was an adult and should have known better, he obviously didn't. Being non-confrontational isn't some character flaw. It's psychological. And he probably needs therapy himself. Screaming at him and demeaning him actually sounds like something your mother probably did, / would do, and I worry about you if that is something that actually made you feel better about yourself. OOP. Yes, I fully admit he was a victim of my mother, but he was a victim who had a support system he never wanted to use. He fully let me be a victim my entire childhood because apparently it was too much effort to try, and to this day doesn't believe he needs therapy. Comment 3. All I can say is based on your post and this interaction is deeply misguided. And you're failing to recognize the truly horrifying thing. You're behaving like the mother you actually should hate. OOP. Oh, trust me, I fully hate her as well, but she is gone, and there is no use in holding a grudge against a dead person. I had hoped though, after his son making him an outsider in his life, his family openly joking face to face about his failings as a father, and his ex-wife draining him for everything he had and making him start over in a one-bedroom apartment, his friends slowly leaving his life one at a time out of embarrassment, that he would have maybe have at least one moment to reflect and maybe consider he should have done things differently. OOP getting therapy due to his past trauma. OOP. Yeah, either way, I need to hop back on the horse for therapy. It'll be good for me. As for my grandparents, I really have had to look back as to how far this pattern of enabling goes back. I know they all did what they could to try and help, but it always seemed like there were times that more active measures could be taken. Times where people should have been far more stern with his addressing his behavior. The older generation on his side are the classical "their family and we stick together no matter what." And I have to think whether his passiveness and enabling is something he picked up on his own or something he learned from his own parents. Update 1. August 20th, 2024, 2 days later. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even amongst some of the YTA. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringeworthy. Some of them were very angry, and they kind of confused me at first until I saw their comments further down or saw their profile and saw rants about double standards or complete non sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, and they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man who I'm just being a big bully to. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world, because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed and understands why I kinda snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic families, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her, don't worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterwards to figure that out. So those parts are fine. Looked kind of like an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her of my intentions to resume more therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. That it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been privately and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am nor would I ever be establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation I was kind of just going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freakout resulted in my grandmother having a mini freakout of her own when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret about my father's failing. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really liked it for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in then telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being, and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspective and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine and am sorry to them as well for ruining the day, which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father. And finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither him nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child, and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track for therapy and admit that a public bitching moment isn't okay, but I should be fine. Comments. Comment 1. This is an interesting one. The ability to control one's failures, yes, that's what I'll call your situation, is very powerful. You'll do all right. Comment 2. Congratulations sincerely on owning your actions. No matter how justified, you acknowledged your outburst was uncomfortable for others and likely not appropriate in that setting. It takes incredible strength of character to admit your failings even if you have no idea how else you could have reacted in that moment. That you immediately communicated that to your loved ones is a huge sign of how respectable and genuine you are as a person. I really hope you keep moving forward from this situation with the same mindset. Good luck. Comment 3, NTA. It sounds like you handled things well after what happened. You took responsibility by apologizing to your girlfriend and family, and it's clear you're committed to moving forward by focusing on therapy and healing. It's understandable that you snapped given everything you've been through. It's also clear that your outburst made your family realize the impact your dad's behavior had on you. Don't beat yourself up over it. You've done what you needed to do to move on, and it seems like you're on the right track now. Update 2, September 12, 2024. 3 weeks later. Things have progressed over the last couple weeks and I now have a broader context about my family. Long story short is, there was a lot hidden from me. My father was an absolute asshole to his family, and that's why they treat him the way they do. I got a lot of feedback including the compilation posts on Best of Redditor updates and Boru, and one thing that stood out was people questioning if my extended family could have contributed to the abuse and that's why he was so feeble. And since I was trying to work on my relationship with my family, I figured it was time to ask the hard questions before going that far. I met with my dad's brothers who invited me out to a popular lunch spot. For context and clarity. Dale is the oldest brother. He is married and has a daughter and a son. My father is the second oldest, self-explanatory. John is the second youngest, also married with a son. Bill is the youngest, married with 3 daughters. So anyways, we met up and I ripped the band-aid off asking about my father growing up, what he was like beyond the basics I know, and what really is going on with their relationship. Dale sighed and basically summed up that besides what I know, there is a lot of backstory I'm unfamiliar with that they never told me about simply because it was never the time nor the place to. What I've always known is that my father was fairly normal when he was young, a little shy but fantastic academically, played sports occasionally, had a close-knit relationship with his brothers, and meeting my mom in high school junior year made everything go downhill. What I didn't know was that my father was a guiding figure for his 2 younger brothers and was generally seen as one of the nicest people, with a bright future ahead of him. My grandparents adored him and he even became a little bit of a golden child, but no one minded. The reason his family doesn't respect him is what happened to his behavior when my mother got attached to him. It first started simple. My mother acted rude and distant to the family. They weren't huge fans, but my father loved her so they tolerated it. She became possessive and slowly isolated my father and convinced him to give up his ambitions and goals. The family became concerned and spent a long time trying to talk to him and convince him to leave. My father didn't budge and began to lash out. When I was born, my extended family tried to talk to my father about my mother's attitude. My father was angry and threatened to report them for harassment. He was in denial about her behavior. When Dale's wife was having fertility issues, my mother messaged her appalling and cruel things. When Dale was pissed and went to talk to my father, he told Dale to drop it and even justified it. Dale punched him and the police almost got involved. Dale hated him going forwards. John grew to hate him when my mother insulted his son due to mild physical disabilities. My father cracked a joke about what she said. John hated him then. Finally, Bill, who always idolized my father, tried to inform my father that my mother made a pass at him and urged divorce. My father responded with a maddening call of utter hate and relationship-ending words. To sum it all up, the more time my father spent with my mother, the more he began to repeat her attitude. When they showed signs of abuse to me and tried to intervene, my father threatened to lie, to accuse them of worse things. My mother had money and lawyers and could make their lives hell if they tried, and my father would gladly let her. They were stuck and could only do so much at a time. The older members of the family, like the grandparents, great and uncles and such, believe in the traditional mindset of family sticking together no matter what, while the generations further down want to keep a distance from him. They're all stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's more. They told me out. It was all essentially that my father died on the hill for my mom, ruining his relationship with his brothers in the process. And when she died and destroyed him, he probably had to realize it was all for nothing. My grandparents seem to not want to accept the fact that he was lost, or maybe they hope he can fix his life. Who knows? This was a lot to process and was only confirmed by my father himself when he called me to ask about family therapy with us. I cut to the chase and asked if what I heard was true. He said yes. I would have agreed to maybe some family therapy, but now I have no idea. My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. I ruined her life years later with an email that revealed everything. Almost 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. What had transpired was so unexpected that I had no time to prepare, either psychologically or financially. My sister was the cause of all of this. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close due to our huge age difference. She married her partner of 3 years, Pete, 39M, when she was 27, and they were married for 3 years. They divorced after 3 years of marriage because Hannah suspected Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I had been living with my parents after college because I had recently begun working and wanted to save money before moving out. My parents were fine with the arrangement as well, until my sister announced her divorce. She returned home one day, crying uncontrollably, and stated that she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then she threw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend Emily, 28F, was attempting to gain weight, and Pete, who was a licensed dietitian, volunteered to help her. I had introduced her to him, and it turned out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was startled that this was occurring because, while Emily and I were not particularly close, I thought she was a decent lady who would never become involved with a married man. Furthermore, dishonesty was out of character for Pete as well. He was completely charmed with Hannah and only had positive things to say about her, so I found it quite difficult to think he cheated on her. I had serious reservations, but my parents immediately trusted her and did not question anything, despite the fact that she had no evidence of him cheating. They simply accepted her word for it. I'm not going to hold it against them since they would prefer their own daughter over their son-in-law regardless of who was correct. What I didn't understand was why they so quickly kicked me out simply because Hannah said so. She stormed in one day, had a tantrum, and persuaded my parents to kick me out merely because I had introduced Emily to Pete. She blamed me for destroying her marriage, and my parents agreed for some reason. I was upset and tried to stop my parents, but they refused to listen. They warned me that if I didn't leave, they would kick me out. In only one day, I had lost both my family and my home and had no idea where to go. I was sobbing on the pavement with all my belongings for about an hour before I was able to gather myself and go to a friend's house for the night. I tried phoning them every day for the next 2 days but had no success. My friend was gracious enough to let me stay at his house until I could find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents were convinced that I was in the wrong and was to blame for the divorce. My parents had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which made no sense given I wasn't the one Pete cheated on. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them at all. When I attempted to visit them, my mother threatened to call the cops if I did not leave. After that, I concluded they were serious and blamed me for whatever had transpired. I don't suppose I had any reason to be surprised, given that my sister was always the favorite child. My parents had never intended for a second child, so I was constantly sidelined. While I didn't care for it growing up, I had no idea it would lead to something so significant. Thinking about it now, I suppose I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my position could have anticipated something like this. Anyway, for the following few weeks, I tried to figure things out on my own. Since Hannah and my parents had effectively cut me off and I had no way to contact them, I couldn't chat with Pete since he had also blocked me, which made no sense to me. I couldn't find him either because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house they shared and gone to live with their separate parents. So, with no way to contact anyone involved, I turned to Emily, my last choice for finding out the truth. As I previously stated, Emily and I were not very close, but I had to do what was necessary. I asked to meet with her one day and explain the problem. I questioned her if Hannah's claims about the affair were accurate and she flatly denied it. To be really honest, I believed her. Emily told me that she'd only seen Pete a few times, and just professionally, so there was nothing going on between them. She had no understanding why Hannah would say such nasty things about her. She even told me she'd had a stable partner for a couple of years and was planning to marry in a few months. She even showed me photos. What Emily told me was far more believable than anything Hannah stated. I had no proof, but I knew Hannah was lying about the real cause for the divorce. However, because I lacked proof, I was unable to return to my family, and I could not have returned without it. Back then, I was yearning to return to my family because I missed them so much, despite all they had done to me. With time, I was able to overcome it and move on with my life. I found a place and made my employment the focus of my life so that I could distract myself. I also needed to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than sitting around feeling unhappy. I was hurting a lot because I didn't have any other options, but I knew I had to keep on, with or without the support of my family. Years have passed and I am doing a lot better in life. I relocated from my small apartment to a much larger one, and I even proposed to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post proved to be a game changer for me. Just a few days after that post, I received an email out of nowhere that not only revealed the full tale of Hannah's divorce, but also provided all of the answers I needed, along with documentation. My fiancé, Liza, 30F, normally just posted about us on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed, where she had a larger audience. It was a public post, so a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law Peter. He happened to be someone my fiancé met at a conference a few years ago, since she was a doctor, and she ended up joining him on Facebook, where he found me. It truly is a tiny world, and for the first time, I felt pleased with it. Pete contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he chose to send an anonymous email. He subsequently claimed that he did this so he wouldn't feel strange about what he was doing, as it had been several years since his divorce, and he didn't want to appear like a disgruntled loser who hadn't moved on from what happened. Besides, he was the one who blocked me in the first place. So he felt strange and guilty about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years ago. The email contained the entire tale and documentation of what happened 7 years ago. When I finished reading it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Apparently, my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, as she had been telling us for so long. Not only was that a massive lie, but she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just as she had accused him of. My friend Frank, 28M, worked as a clerk at a grocery store near Hannah's house back then. I would never have noticed the connection myself because I had never seen them together. I suppose they had kept it sufficiently under wraps, but not enough for Pete to find out. When questioned, Hannah told Pete that it was all my fault because I had introduced her to Frank and even told her how much he needed her help because he was an aspiring singer and she was a really excellent singer herself. She agreed to help him, and they were in love before they realized it. She even admitted that I was involved and had helped them keep things quiet for so long. All of this was obviously a fabrication, and I had no idea Frank and Hannah were up to anything. Pete was enraged when he found out and blocked my entire family, which he now admits was idiotic of him. However, he was so enraged that he didn't think much about his conduct. Of course, he told me all of this in person because the email was designed to be as impersonal as possible. He did not want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. He had provided copies of emails between my sister and Frank in which they discussed how easy it was to dupe Pete. The emails were filled with declarations of love and plans for where they would meet next. Hannah couldn't refute any of this because she signed off on the emails with her middle name, which few people were aware of. I had her dead to rights. After combing through Liza's Facebook friends, I concluded that Pete must have sent me the email. My gut intuition told me that it had to do with social networking. When I eventually discovered Pete on her friend list, I contacted him. We planned to meet a few days ago, and he informed me that he learned about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who had met him a few years before. I had told Emily to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was cursing myself when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she would have informed Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence a long time ago. Anyway, Emily and Pete ran into one another a few years ago, and she ended up questioning him about their divorce. They started conversing and he eventually learned what Hannah had told us. He said that he wanted to speak with me about it and tell me the truth. But he didn't because he felt strange. I swear, if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much easier. I did forgive him though, since I needed his cooperation to completely destroy my sister, and I knew he would agree. Hannah had clearly been lying to my parents in order to secure financial assistance during her divorce, and she had even thrown me under the bus for good measure, knowing that one discussion with Emily would disclose the truth. I couldn't believe someone, particularly someone related to me by blood, could be so selfish. I'm sure Hannah never bothered to correct the record, and my parents had simply accepted whatever lies she'd been giving them during her divorce. She knew that if the truth about her being the cheater was out, she would be in serious danger, and she simply couldn't risk it. That's too bad. The truth had finally come out, and I was going to use it to ruin her life, just as she had ruined mine all those years before. I had not seen my family in 7 years, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house, but they hadn't moved. I checked this with an old neighbor before arriving, and I was relieved to discover that Hannah was still living with them as well. That didn't surprise me because Hannah had always been a couch slug who loathed doing her own job. If she could live with our old parents and have them perform all of her duties, she would. Anyway, 2 days ago, Pete and I unexpectedly arrived at their place. My mother answered the door, and we hardly gave her time to process what was occurring before we walked in. My father and Hannah were also present in the living room. We were back together as one happy family, but only for a short time. Their faces turned nasty as soon as we entered. My father instantly threatened us, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave. But I shot back, telling him he could do whatever he wanted once he saw the documents we were about to show them. My parents looked perplexed, but Hannah looked like she was about to vomit and excused herself, heading to her room. I assumed she was trying to flee, but there was no use in doing so. Pete then proceeded to show my parents the divorce papers and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's correspondence, while I described the true story. Pete also told my parents that Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring. In the settlement, she had to sell the ring because she couldn't afford to pay him the money. She is a high school teacher. My parents were already terrified by what we had told them, and this was simply the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my father demanded an explanation from Hannah for all that had occurred. Despite all of the evidence against her, she continued to lie and cover up the truth, so my father kicked her out. He packed her belongings for her, handed her the bags and then told us all to leave their house. I didn't need to be told twice before leaving with Pete, as my sister cried and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I did all those years ago. This was excellent karma, and I could not be happier. It's been a few days since then, and my sister just arrived at my house a few hours ago, insisting that I immediately make amends with my parents. I had no idea how she located me, but I informed her that I no longer owed her anything. She had ruined my life once, so I returned the favor and we were now equal. I swear she had no pride left because the moment I said that, she burst into tears and accused me of being a monster. I didn't care about her drama and closed the door as she began to sob uncontrollably. I just put on my headphones and listened to music as Liza, my fiancé, worked in her study, so that neither of us would be disturbed. Hannah eventually departed, but not before leaving a message with a marker on my door, reminding me that I was nothing more than a vengeful monster. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with what I did and have no regrets. But Hannah appears to believe that I am the villain here. I just did to her what she had done to me some years ago, only I told the truth, whereas she did nothing but lie and threw me under the bus. So what do you all think? Am I the hole who ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. Hannah is still troubling me, despite the fact that she was kicked out a week ago. I had to threaten her with calling the cops after she called me for the 14th time today before she stopped. I'm not sure how she found my phone number and address, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. Hannah is attempting to get sympathy from me since, apparently, a school teacher's salary is insufficient for her to support herself. But I don't think that's the case. She's just furious that she has to seek a home and pay her own rent, energy and groceries now that our parents have booted her out. I don't feel really sad for her. In case you were asking, yeah, I did block her phone multiple times, but I think she's having her pals add me to conference calls, so it's pointless. My parents are as awful, if not worse than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post announcing my engagement, so they want to be a part of my life again and have expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They have not apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to simply invite them to my wedding, which is meant to be a very special day for me. I don't know where these individuals get the courage to say things like this, but I'm not reacting to any of it. Liza and I have had a blast reading their texts because there's no chance they're genuine right now. It's all just very sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to go for work, but she stopped me by flinging herself across the hood of my car and refusing to move until I spoke with her. It was really frustrating, so I ended up contacting the cops this time. They carried her away while she yelled and wept, attempting to paint me as the evil guy. But nobody believed her sad girl play. It took some time to file charges against her, but once I did, I left for work since I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day. I was confident that my parents would bail her out because she was their favorite, and I was proven correct. After getting her out, my parents texted me a lengthy message about how I was being far too harsh on them for an honest mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was comical since nothing about what my sister and dad subjected me to was either honest or incorrect. They knew exactly what they were doing and were fully aware of how nasty they were. Despite the fact that I had nowhere else to go, they nonetheless sent me out on the street. So now that I can do the same to them, I see no reason to be forgiving or compassionate. I texted my parents back, telling them that they had lost the right to tell me what I could and couldn't do years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I have not blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will shortly. Hopefully, I'll be free of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my social media, only to discover that my folks had sent me yet another lengthy message. Liza and I went through it together, and I swear it was the funniest thing I had ever read. I suppose the poor people are unaware that nothing they say or do today will cause me any harm. I am just giggling at how delusional and sad they are. Apparently they still consider us to be family, and they have taken Hannah back in. They've decided that both of their children need a second chance, as if I've ever done anything wrong. So while they have welcomed my sister back in, they also expect me and Liza to come to their house shortly for dinner so that we may settle our disagreements civilly before the wedding. It was bold of them to think that I would want them at my wedding in the first place. We got a good laugh at their dumb message. After that, I wrote back, indicating I had no interest in anything they had asked us to. I was content living away from them, as I had for the previous 7 years. They had shown me that I was better off without them, and I would be eternally grateful for that. I didn't need them anymore, and I didn't want their supposed forgiveness. They may continue to play happy family with my sister as they had done so far. With that last text, I blocked them for good since I no longer wanted the chuckles. I was done, and I was leaving. I'm sure they'll try to contact me in some way soon, but unfortunately for them, I'm done with it. Liza is the only family I need for now, and I'm content with just her. Unfortunately, my dad and sister have never been able to think beyond themselves, and I doubt they ever will. So the next time they contact me, they will speak with my lawyer, and that is a commitment.